Welcome, Climate Viewers. This is Jim Lee from ClimateViewer News at ClimateViewer.com. The United Nations has officially blocked, the United States and Saudi Arabia have officially blocked UN geoengineering governance. This is a pretty important topic for tonight. I'm going to go through a lot very quickly. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And, pay attention because this one matters. So we're going to jump right into it. No time for dilly-dallying. So the U.S. blocks UN resolution on geoengineering. The measure called for a report on carbon capture and solar radiation management. How did we get here? So let's step back just a hair. If you haven't been to Geoengineering and Weather Modification Exposed, it's on climateviewer.com/geoengineering. Best information on the net. Good starting point. Just click the Geoengineering button right here on climateviewer.com. It'll take you there and give you all of the information that you need to know on, like who's actually sponsoring this, who's paying for all of this, programs, who's involved, names and addresses and patents, maps and all of that sort of thing, where geoengineering is occurring. But if so if you're new to this is where you start. But let's get into it. Hands Off Mother Earth Manifesto, a permanent ban on geoengineering. So this is from the ETC group. And 110 civil society organizations and popular movements demanded immediate stop to climate geoengineering. So they basically, ETC group has, been pushing to stop any kind of geoengineering. In the past, they have had success with the Stratospheric Particle Injection and Climate Engineering SPICE program. They shut that down. Right now, we're facing David Keith and his ScopeX Stratocruiser flight system geoengineering field experiment coming up this spring. So there's a lot to do about this right now. And on March 11th, there was a slew of articles, I covered it in my last video, about, now we've made geoengineering safer. So let's get it on. But regardless, they're calling for a ban. These groups are trying to influence the United Nations to permanently, forevermore ban geoengineering. But that doesn't stop, the pushing of all of this. And let's go to the image. This is from my presentation, The Climate Changers and Water Wars, Technocracy and Geoengineering. And, there are several steps to this process. Accidental geoengineering, air quotes, as they like to call it, they call it that. Begin geoengineering, climate engineering, or climate intervention using pollution sources that create clouds. Call it an accident. Geoengineering governance. This is the step that's, really going on right now. Write laws to exempt scientists from legal liability. Field experiments. That's what David Key's trying to do. Begin testing geoengineering technology. Engage public response. See David Key's ScopeX. And then finally, legal global deployment, gain control of Earth's thermostat, and alter rainfall patterns worldwide, own the weather. This is really the grand plan for geoengineering. So we're at step 1 and 2 for sure. David Keith is step 3. And if they do finally get the governance issues all together, then we'll be at step 4 finally. Hopefully never in my lifetime, but it just seems to be coming quicker and quicker. So let's go back to the story. So when was this published? Do they have a date? December 2018. India should demand international political oversight of geoengineering research and development. Followed up by, on February 26, 2019, Switzerland puts geoengineering governance on UN environmental agenda. And they wanted the UN environmental program to handle the laws about climate hacking. No longer the preserve of science fiction, climate hacking technologies may need international oversight, say backers of draft resolution. ETC Group, the people who are behind the ban. Why is geoengineering being discussed at the UNEA, and how should civil society respond? I'm not going to read all this to you. The links are in the details. So they put it out there as well. And followed up by Ban Ki-moon, UN dude, governing geoengineering, March 11th. 2019. We all know what March 11th signifies. That's a pretty important day for a lot of people. And that's the day that David Keith and Peter Irvine released their paper saying, hey, we got this, bro. We figured out how to make geoengineering more safe. So, let's go for this project. Go, go, go. Anyway, moving along. So, the ETC group said the UN must take on geoengineering governance same day. And they're basically saying that, who else could do this? You know what I mean? This affects the entire world. So probably the UN would be a good place to write laws to say whether or not geoengineering should happen. But regardless, the U.S. blocked it, along with Saudi Arabia. So we're going to get into this article specifically because it's kind of important. Basically, the United States joined Saudi Arabia to derail a UN resolution that sought to improve the world's understanding of potential efforts to lace the sky with sunlight-reflecting aerosols or use carbon-catching fans. The two countries were joined by Brazil in blocking the resolution in the United Nations Environmental Assembly Conference in Nairobi, Kenya, earlier this week. The measure asked the world's decision-making body on the environment to commission a report outlining research and planning related to carbon dioxide removal and solar radiation management. Those controversial efforts are still in planning stage and are not operational. Dun, dun, dun. More on that later. Switzerland and 9 other nations. Let me blow this up. Scrolling back up. Switzerland and 9 other nations originally asked the United Nations Environmental Program for guidance on possible future governance options and analysis of the implications of geoengineering, but they agreed to substantially reduce the scope of their resolution in hopes that the United States, Saudi Arabia, and Brazil would allow it to move forward. The final version, which failed to gain consensus Wednesday, would have asked the UNEP only to provide a compilation by next year of current scientific research on geoengineering and the UN bodies that have adopted resolutions regarding it. This is a key statement right here. So, really, all they were asking for was to compile a list of current scientific research on geoengineering. Why would the United States and Saudi Arabia block that? Do you have something to hide? I think so. I think it's pretty obvious to everybody. The proponents wish that the UNEA become the institutional home for geoengineering within the UN structure, but sources said the United States in particular insisted that the question about geoengineering be left to the IPCC, a scientific body with a narrow focus on global warming. Geoengineering will be a key part of the IPCC's upcoming 6th assessment report to be published in 2021 or 2022. And sources say the U.S. negotiators refuse to agree to any other study or assessment that would be published before it. That raises another huge red flag. Why all of a sudden is the IPCC going to be, the determining factor in all this? Blows my freaking mind. The United States' focus on the IPCC raised eyebrows. Both the United States and Saudi Arabia angered parties at the UN climate talks in Katowice, Poland in December by questioning the IPCC's work. The two countries joined Russia to block a popular proposal to welcome last year's landmark IPCC report that said the world must act aggressively to counteract climate change within 12 years. The special report said that failing to do so would result in catastrophic effects. Now, that's where AOC gets her 12 years, or we're all going to die from. But they say just catastrophic effects regardless. In Nairobi, atmospheric chemist and State Department official Farhan Akhtar led negotiations for the United States on geoengineering resolution last week. The State Department didn't provide comment for this story. Environmentalists expressed disappointment. There's definitely a lot of frustration on the part of the countries that have fought for the resolution for the last 2 weeks and have tried to improve it and find consensus, said Linda Schneider, a senior program officer at the Heinrich Bolle Stiftung University, I believe. Besides Switzerland, the motion was backed by so-and-so and all these people. Other parties included some European nations, and Bolivia argued even stronger language for using caution in approaching geoengineering. None of them opposed the final resolution. The final version of the measure included a lengthy preamble that expressed concern about the potential transboundary risks and adverse impacts of carbon dioxide removal and solar radiation management on the environment and sustainable development. It also emphasized the importance of applying the precautionary principle when fiddling with the world's thermostat. I fully agree with that. Daniel Bodansky, a professor of law at Arizona State University, an expert on international agreements, criticized the resolution for painting direct air capture of carbon dioxide and solar radiation management with the same brush. I can understand fears about the latter, spraying the sky, he said, but I find it much more difficult to understand objections to the former. Lumping them together as geoengineering makes no sense, since they don't pose similar risks. Now, I want to reiterate this point. So, sucking CO2 out of the sky does not have any of the side effects associated with spraying the entire world in chemicals to block the sun. And it's going to alter rainfall patterns. The list goes on and on. See the video on my channel. It's also on ClimateViewer.com by Alan Robach on Stratosphere. The 21 reasons why it's a bad idea. But anyway, back to the story. Some experts suggest that there could be unwanted side effects from infusing the atmosphere with aerosols, like more severe weather. While Bodansky said there are potential risks associated with solar radiation management, or SRM, he noted that the proposed resolution didn't balance those with dangers of runaway climate change. It seems to me inconsistent to say, on the one hand, that global warming is the biggest problem facing humanity faces, and then go on to say, on the other hand, but we shouldn't even do research on SRM because it may pose risks. He said, either climate change is the biggest problem we face or it's not, and if it is, then all hands on deck. So therein lies the main problem. That they're totally pushing this narrative that if climate change is going to kill everybody, then we should certainly look into doing solar radiation management. And I call bullshit on that all day, every day, air day. Bodansky also argued that the IPCC was inappropriate and was the appropriate body to explore issues of geoengineering. Last year's special report found that there is no possible pathways to maintain the threshold of 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming that don't include large-scale carbon dioxide removal. The report also noted possible governance challenges. The Swiss resolution preamble recognizes the IPCC's work on the issue and the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change authority over climate mitigation and adaptation, the Convention on Biological Diversity, which banned geoengineering, and the London Convention on the Prevention of Marine Dumping, which bans ocean iron fertilization, have also weighed in on geoengineering in the past. But Schneider and the Heinrich Boll Stiftung said that the United Nations Environmental Assembly's broad purview made it the ideal forum to oversee future geoengineering experiments and governance issues. Questions of artificially altering the world's climate with are much broader than just a climate discussion and involve impacts on environment and on ecosystems, on human rights and democracy. From our perspective, it would have been really good to also anchor that the discussion in the UNEA and the environmental program to make sure that we would get a broader perspective on the impacts, not just get the perspective of the people who are studying global warming, but really explore all of the issues, related to this. This is a serious freaking matter, and SRM will kill people. Even David Key said SRM will kill people. So anyway, the list of Switzerland's co-sponsors shows that climate vulnerable countries want broader oversight of geoengineering too. Countries with small governance lack the personnel to sift through numerous reports, and they stand to suffer if the practices result in unintended consequences. Micronesia, late during last year's meeting of the Montreal Protocol, proposed language calling for an assessment of possible impacts of stratospheric ozone on the stratospheric ozone layer from geoengineering after an advisory panel warned that SRM could harm it, and it will. And that's proven by what happens with volcanoes. But anyway, putting sulfur into the stratosphere, bad idea. Monumentally bad idea. Let alone the fact that David Keith and company have discussed using aluminum, titanium, diamond dust, calcium carbonate, and the list goes on. So sulfur is not just the only thing they've talked about spraying in the sky. It wasn't adopted, but the country plans to offer a similar proposal at this year's conference. Janos Pastor, executive director of the Carnegie Climate Geoengineering Governance Initiative, said carbon capture and SRM would ultimately need to be treated separately when it came to global governance issues. I agree with that statement. Mitigation means reducing emissions, and direct carbon removal will likely become a large part of nations' goals under the Paris Agreement, he said. When it comes to solar radiation management, that's where the challenge is. There's no home, meaning there's really nobody to overlook all of this stuff going on with the idea of spraying aerosols in the sky. Nobody's really, going to take the responsibility over that. So to have the United States block that, especially with the strong concerns on my part that the United States has already implemented some geoengineering technologies, raises all the red flags in the world. But anyway, climate advocates in progressive countries also worry that existence of tools to cool the atmosphere could blunt interest in climate mitigation and adaptation and lengthen global reliance on fossil fuels, but they acknowledge the need to start the conversation about it. I think governance is an incredibly vital component of geoengineering. Even if you're opposed to geoengineering, you need a governance mechanism to be able to enforce that. So international conversations will absolutely be necessary. So this is right where I come from. And you guys have seen this with my Environmental Modification Accountability Act. The idea that, we have to have some kind of accountability. We have to have somebody overseeing this because this is a world problem. And if some country decided to go and do geoengineering using any one of these 10 technologies to deploy it, then they could literally hijack the world's temperature. They could do so much damage, kill so many people, and there's really nobody overseeing any of this. So anyway, that's the big story for today is this problem with the U.S. and UN basically putting the kibosh on the attempts to get the United Nations Environmental Program to write laws just saying, let's get all of the studies together, let's get a full report, and let's figure out what the hell's going on. So, and then of course the ETC group, which is part, this geoengineering monitor is run by Heinrich Boll and ETC group. High emitting oil producing countries block progress on geoengineering governance at the United Nations. So this is where I'm going to get into the backstory, and I'm going to go through this very rapidly. So how did we get here? Agenda 21. If you don't know about Agenda 21, you need to read it. So this is where the United Nations comes in, and they basically started, saying, look, the global warming is a serious freaking problem, and here's how we're going to deal with it with sustainable development. Anytime you hear the word sustainable development, sustainable this, sustainable that, or you hear smart, anything with the word smart in it, we're talking technocracy, we're talking about global governance, whether you like it or not, that's the United Nations. So, anyway, next up, we have the Paris Accord. So the COP21 Paris Agreement. Now, as many of you may remember, Donald Trump canceled that plan. I went to the EPA hearing on flight pollution. And basically what happened there was Obama was trying to keep his promises to the COP21 crowd, the Paris Accord, and by limiting greenhouse gases coming from planes. And I took 4 other activists who were concerned about geoengineering and chemtrails to Washington, D.C., and we had a hearing, and we talked about planes making clouds and how that's a freaking problem. And planes spraying out metals everywhere. That's a freaking problem. Greenhouse gases, last on our list. And they were trying to use the Clean Air Act to enact regulations on the airline industry. Meanwhile, we're going, WTF, everybody online is pissed off about clouds coming out of planes, and you guys are focused on greenhouse gases just so Obama can keep promises to the COP21 technocrats. Insanity to me. So we went there and we, scrambled that egg pretty well. But regardless, that all came from the Paris Agreement. So on to the next one. Just briefly, then we have Transforming Our World, the Agenda 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And that's Agenda 2030. All of these links are already in the details. They're pretty much in the order that I'm going through this video. So they'll be available after this video is published permanently. And I'll put them in an article when I'm done. But regardless, so these are the globalist goals for dealing with global warming. And then you got the latest Johnny-come-lately, the Green New Deal. So what does Agenda 21, the Paris Agreement, Agenda 2030, and the Green New Deal have in common? Technocracy and geoengineering. Why is that the case? And I'm going to explain it to you very clearly. Right here, this is from a presentation I did in 2016. I went out to G. Edward Griffin's conference, Global Warming, An Inconvenient Lie. You can still buy the DVDs for that if you like. I'm not trying to sell anything in this video, but it's there if you want it. And you can see my presentation, the videos right here. And you'll see me up on stage, at Freedom Force International, giving my first PowerPoint presentation in front of a room full of people, and everybody on the stage had a PhD but me, so that was kind of awkward. But regardless, this is it in a nutshell. And this is from slide 70. I put a lot of work into this presentation. Within the Paris Agreement, there's an implicit assumption that there will be a need for greenhouse gases to be removed, said Phil Williamson, a scientist from the UK University of East Anglia who worked on the report Climate geoengineering is what countries have agreed to do, although they haven't really realized they've agreed to do it. I'm going to read that again, because this is really the crux of where we're at with COP21, with the Paris Agreement, Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, the Green New Deal. These are deals that set bars so high that they are freaking unachievable. Okay? But climate geoengineering is what countries have agreed to do, although they haven't really realized they've agreed to do it. Scary stuff right there. So, don't believe me? COP21 Paris deal far too weak to prevent devastating climate change, academics warn. Some of the world's top climate scientists have launched a blistering attack on the deal. This is 8 January 2016. It gets worse. Leading climate scientists say Paris conference failed. Call for geoengineering. January 2016. Does the Paris Agreement open the door to geoengineering? December 2015. UC Berkeley. Academics, get that out of my face. Academics call for geoengineering preparation in wake of Paris Agreement's deadly flaws. 11 January 2016. Can we achieve the Paris climate goals without unproven technology? December 14th, 2015. Same day as this one. So this stuff just rolled out all over the place. Geoengineering to alter the climate moves closer to reality. October 31st, 2016. Bloomberg News. So that's where we are today. They're setting these goals that are impossible to meet. They know that countries are not going to stop using coal and gasoline and methane and, all of these things because they can't. So what happens? You got, this crazy bitch making insane proclamations, talking about don't eat burgers anymore. Is it a good idea to have children? That's like China, okay? Making, the COP21, the Paris Accord, and Agenda 2030 look like a joke compared to what she's demanding. And it's intentional. The intention is set the bar so freaking high that the only solution is geoengineering. That's what's going on. And if you don't believe me, here we go. This is the National Academy of Sciences. Developing a research agenda and research governance approaches for our climate intervention strategies that reflect sunlight to cool the earth. This just started. Okay? This is a current ongoing program right now. I'm going to go remind you, if you want to see who's paying for geoengineering, who's behind all of it, right there, mapping the landscape of climate engineering. This was published December 2014, and if you look at the image, you can see who's paying for it. On the left side, funding solar radiation management. The biggest one, National Science Foundation. They're paying for this. They're the ones backing all of this. European Commission, NERC from the US, UK, the Royal Society from UK, EPSRC UK, NASA, and the Fund for Innovative Climate and Energy Research, FICER. That's Bill Gates. US Department of Energy, NCAR, the list goes on and on. NOAA, Academy of Finland, and there's a bunch of other smaller contributors. But you see how much that is? That's the USA. That's the National Science Foundation. Why do you think they blocked this report? Because it would have made all of the current geoengineering research public. That's why they blocked this resolution at the United Nations. They don't want the truth out there. And who's the people benefiting from all this money? Right over here. Ken Caldera, Alan Robach, Ben Kravitz, Peter Irvine. And David Keith's in here too. David Keith's up here. I don't know why he's got a different color, but anyway. So, and these are the names. Jim Haywood. These are the people writing all the research. They're the ones benefiting from the money. They're the ones pushing the geoengineering. They're the ones making the studies that are going to make global geoengineering a reality. So, that's the reality of the situation. All this information has been on my website for 4 years, right here, just this part. Anyway, so let's back out of this and come back here to the end, because this is where it gets bad. So I did an article just recently on it, Playing God in Geoengineering Governance. And basically, the grandfather of climate science said on his deathbed, right before he died, if we're going to prevent the planet from warming up another couple degrees, we're going to have to go to geoengineering. And that's it. End of story. They don't care how many people it's going to kill. They don't care that we should be planting trees instead of trying to suck carbon dioxide out of the sky with fake plastic trees. David Keith owns Carbon Engineering, which is also a CO2 sucking company. But David Keith is also the one that wants to spray the sky. So he's playing both sides of the coin. He's like, well, if they ban the solar radiation management permanently, I got my backup plan. We'll just make a lot of money sucking CO2 out of the sky. You can't make this stuff up. And I put a whole lot of these links in here. Go back and read these. Geoengineering Governance, India, Monsoons, Plane Farts, and Dead People is a really good one. But, that's the problem. And that's where the article came from. I don't want a free trial. Get out of my video. Grandfather of climate science, Wallace Smith, broker, gave one last warning before death, March 3rd, 2019. But that's the problem. David Keith's experiment's coming up real soon, and he wants it to go off without a hitch. And that's why there's so much to do about governing geoengineering, about possibly banning geoengineering, about, Switzerland saying that the UN should govern geoengineering. I'm going to bring it up again. Let's go back to the chart. Here's where we are at step 1, accidental geoengineering. Step 2, geoengineering governance. So that all the people that are going to end up killing people are exempt from any kind of liability. Field experiments, David Keith. ScopeX. This jewel right here. The Stratocruiser flight system. And you can see, right here. Originally, it was called the Strato Shield, hose to the sky. This was from Bill Gates' Pfizer. It was an Intellectual Ventures Lab, a Microsoft, Bill Gates spin-off company, co-owned by Nathan Myhrvold, the patent troll, and it's exactly the same idea. Fill a balloon, pump chemicals into the stratosphere, float it up there. And I put all these images together from several videos they had put out. But you look at David Keith's system, same idea. It's the same idea as the SPICE program, stratospheric particle injection for climate engineering, the one that the ETC group shut down in the UK. Raise a balloon in the sky, have a delivery system underneath it, and as you can see, they've got measurement equipment on this little satellite-looking thing with solar panels, and then a hose that drops down, and that's where the actual chemicals are sprayed out of in the stratosphere. Oh, by the way, that's where the ozone layer is. So that's what they're doing. That's what David Keith is planning, and you can read all about it. And you can also read all about David Keith, saying, "Hey, this is going to kill people." Just saying, and the 27 reasons why geoengineering is a bad idea, SRM. This is what they're talking about. Carbon dioxide removal has none of these side effects they're talking about here. like drought in Africa and Asia, drying up the entire southern hemisphere, making the northern hemisphere wetter. And the list goes on. Feel free to watch the video. I put it up on my YouTube channel. You can watch it, and it's hilarious, and not all at the same time. But this is one of my favorite parts.
So
let me go
an overview of geoengineering. So stratospheric aerosols, which is the idea that's gotten the most attention, which is what Yaga talked about also. So I went to the first meeting on geoengineering at NASA Ames, and this issue of Rolling Stone came out that week, and across the top, it's got our two favorite people there, but across the top, Dr. Evil's plan to stop global warming. And inside there was an article about Lowell Wood, who used to work with Edward Teller, saying, oh, we can control the climate. I'm a physicist. I'm smart. I know what to do. And I went to this meeting for 2 days at NASA Ames, and the room was too hot, and they couldn't control the temperature of the room, but they were talking about controlling the temperature of the planet. And there's these physicists and engineers thought, oh, this is a really cool problem. I started writing down reading NASA Ames, and the room was too hot, and they couldn't control the temperature of the room, but they were talking about controlling the temperature of the planet. And there's these physicists and engineers.
That's priceless. I mean, they literally couldn't control the temperature of the room, but they're talking about controlling the temperature of the planet. And that's why he went on to, come up with this list of 27 reasons why geoengineering is a bad idea.
Engineers thought, oh, this is a really cool problem. I started writing down reasons why I thought maybe it wasn't such a good idea. And I got up to 20, and I published a paper, 20 Reasons Why Geoengineering May Be a Bad Idea. And since then, I've looked at it more, and my latest paper has this list of 27 reasons for concern or risks. But it also has benefits. Like, if we could do it, we could reduce global warming, number one. And that benefit might be worth dealing with all of these risks. But I think we have to evaluate each of them so that we can then make informed decisions in the future. How can we answer these questions? The ones in red I've listed can be answered with indoor experiments with climate models, with GeoMIP or other models. And so I'm going to talk about GeoMIP. We set this up 8 years ago to try.
And I'm not going to bore you with all this science. If you want to watch the video, it's on my channel, Stratospheric Sulfur Geoengineering Benefits and Risks by Alan Robach. This actually was presented at the Weather Modification Conference I went to last January. And, I actually was interviewing Dr. Jim Fleming, my hero. He's a weather modification historian. So as I was interviewing him, Alan Robach saw me, and we made eyes, and I'm like, I want to interview you and pick your brain. And he quickly, hauled ass. But regardless, he gave this presentation at the conference I was at. And, he was there and he was gone. So I didn't get to interview Alan Robach. I look forward to doing that in the future. But regardless, they have this geoengineering model intercomparison project, GeoMIP. And it basically is a bunch of computer models to tell them what's going to happen to the world if they do pull off this geoengineering legally on a global scale. And it's a computer model. I modeled video games. I did 3D Studio Max, inverse kinematics, all kinds of different computer modeling. I've been on the computer since I was 12. I'm a graphics artist. I understand, about simulating reality. I've read all of the studies on the GeoMIP and all of the climate models. And what I can tell you is this: they do not have enough information to make the kind of predictions they are about global warming, and they certainly don't have enough information to put into a computer model to predict what would happen if they did legalize geoengineering on a global scale. So it's a guess, and every time they run the model, it spits out a different result. It's kind of like the spaghetti plot on a hurricane. It changes every day. They don't know where the hell a hurricane's going. So how the hell could they know what's going to happen if you spray the entire globe with sulfur, titanium, aluminum, diamond dust, any of these chemicals? They have no clue. And that's just the truth of the matter. So his list of 27 concerns are 27 concerns I have, which include military use of the technology. Who gets to control the climate? Who actually makes gets to control the dial? That's a serious freaking question. But regardless, that's where we're at. We're at this serious problem. And meanwhile, nobody wants to talk about the geoengineering already going on. So it's already happening. It's been happening for years. It's ship tracks and plane farts. Contrails, chemtrails, whatever the hell you want to call them. It's accidental geoengineering to them. So they just call it accidental geoengineering. It's still geoengineering. They still have no freaking clue what effects it actually has. But, hey, it's just an accident. Until, MIT comes out and they're like, hey, we're about to kill a massive accidental experiment in reducing global warming. Oh, it's called ship tracks, creating marine stratocumulus. And then the other one being, the airplanes. We suggest the G20 initiate an international project with the Manhattan Project's focus and intensity. A new Manhattan Project to save the Arctic from the Arctic Methane Emergency Group. This is one of the most important articles I've ever written. I really hope that you guys will read this, because if you really want to understand what's going on with ship tracks and chemtrails/contrails, this is the one you're going to read. This was originally posted on MIT before it got too many damn shares and they deleted it. But regardless, you got that, and then you got this. So between these two articles, airplane contrails may be creating accidental geoengineering. Smithsonian Magazine. We're about to kill a massive accidental experiment in reducing global warming. So I'm gonna go back to where we started. Step 1, accidental geoengineering. Everything that we're all bitching about, it's just an accident. Don't you know? I mean, don't be silly. We didn't mean to geoengineer. It's an accident. But regardless, there's got to be some kind of oversight of this sort of thing. Somebody just asked a question in chat, and I really want to answer it. Do you think there could be cosmic energies coming into our planet that will assist humans, and they want to keep it out? No. Cosmic energy plays a major role in this, and if you go to climateviewer.com/geoengineering, what you will notice is that I have two subsections. One is on HARP, and the other, this is on the geoengineering page. So just click geoengineering right here, scroll down. I have an entire section on HARP and a section on chemtrails. And what you're going to realize is that cosmic rays play a very important part in cloud formation. And right now we are in a solar minimum. So right now, because the ionosphere is weaker, more cosmic rays penetrate the atmosphere, which leads to more ionization of atmospheric aerosols. Now, let me try to make this simple. Clouds are made of three things: water, dust, and static. Some kind of ionizing energy, some kind of electricity, a spark, if you will. So, to make that happen, you need the three. And because we are in we're in a solar minimum right now, the ionosphere is weaker, which means more galactic cosmic rays are penetrating the atmosphere, which means more clouds. So that's what's really the concern about galactic cosmic rays. If you go to my essential reading section and you see this one right here, cirrus clouds matter. Geoengineering with cirrus cloud seeding. You can read all about that, how they're trying to change those clouds in the sky, which are currently trapping heat, the chemtrails, the contrails, the persistent contrails, the plane farts, that if they thin them out, they can stop trapping heat and start, basically what's called Earth radiation management, where they thin these clouds out so that the incoming solar radiation is still blocked, but the outgoing radiation, the heat at night, can escape to space. And they've said many things like, we can seed the clouds. Seeding is limited to high latitude winters or nighttime seeding. I interviewed Dr. Rangasai Halthori from the FAA Aviation Climate Change Research Initiative, and he said we would like to have more contrail-induced cirrus clouds during the day and none during the night. And Ulrich Schumann from the German Aerospace Center said at the recent research results on climate impact of contrail cirrus and mitigation options at the ICAO Colloquium on Aviation Climate Change 2010, we want less warming and more cooling contrails, predictable for operational planning. So, is it an accident? Is it accidental geoengineering? Even if it was before, it isn't anymore. So they are actively trying to experiment on how to make the plane farts, the clouds that are coming out of these planes, cool the planet instead of heating the planet. Because that's what they figured out. It's destroying the ozone layer. It's doing a whole lot of stuff. But that's a video for another time. And you guys can dig into all of that right here. And just to the point of the, what we're talking about with that. Aerosol cloud interactions is one of the main uncertainties in climate research, still is today. Contrail-induced radiator forcing 5,000 times greater than recent estimates of a single plane creating persistent contrails. Basically, it's heating the planet more than the entire civil aviation fleet CO2. Contrails formed by aircraft can evolve into cirrus clouds indistinguishable from those formed naturally. These spreading contrails may be causing more climate warming today than all the carbon dioxide emitted by aircraft since the start of aviation. And that is a serious freaking problem. So, to the cloud, the GCR issue of this, clouds are the main driver of climate change on Earth. Relationship between cosmic ray flux and cloud cover should also be of importance in an explanation of the correlation between solar cycle length and global temperature that has been found. And this is from a guy named Heinrich Svensmark. And if you've never seen his website or his documentary, it's The Cloud Mystery. He is really breaking edge research on all of this. And this is something I said in 2015 at the hearing that I went to for the EPA, that you guys aren't considering any of this stuff. You're only considering what the IPCC tells you. None of this stuff is in the climate models, and that should be a red flag. But what really should be a red flag is academics call for geoengineering preparation in wake of Paris Agreement's deadly flaws. And once again, with the Green New Deal, COP21, and finally with the U.S. putting, the kibosh on all of this, that's what the problem is I fully believe the United States is already involved in geoengineering. The National Science Foundation here is the largest funder of geoengineering solar radiation management by far, and the United States doesn't want to disclose all of the current ongoing research and some of probably the illicit spraying that's coming out of the CIA planes. For those who don't know, the CIA has their own airline. The U.S. Air Force and they have NATO. And NATO has a pipeline committee, the NATO Pipeline Committee. And from just that NATO Pipeline Committee, they can put something in the jet fuel in several 20-something countries worldwide like that. So if you want to read about that, read contrails and There it was, single fuel concept. And I wrote all about this. Contrails geoengineering and the NATO single fuel concept. Link not in the details. I'll add it after the video. There's the link for that, Jewel. And this is really where it comes down to. This is where I, really fleshed out the idea that if somebody were to be behind global geoengineering and nobody ever knew it, it would be them. I mean, they have the Contrail Cirrus simulation and prediction tool built into the Aviation Next Gen, and over in Europe, Eurocontrol, and that's why you see grid patterns in the sky, because all the planes are flown by freaking supercomputers that tell them where to go. And let me go down here real quick. They have new additives, the high thermal stability, temperature thermal stability additive, HITS additive for JP8 that makes ice crystals smaller, therefore they stay in the sky longer. Propulsion research could revolutionize jet fuel. This was deleted from the internet. Spec 8 8Q462. It's in all of the planes. Well, anyway, if you come down here to the very bottom and you go through all the jet fuel stuff that I got here, because I really wanted to break it down, all the different types of fuel additives that they put in there, an exact list of all of the fuel additives, which you can see here, and I'll blow it up pretty big, but you can basically see that these are showing the jet fuel type. And then, so this is Jet A1, Jet A1 right here, Military Defense Standard 9191, F44, F40. These are the JP8s and the JP5s, JP8s over here. And you see, basically the chart goes whether it's standard, whether it's required, or optional. So it shows that down here at the bottom. And you can see optional, put in by agreement, E, engine manufacturer's agreement, R, required. And then the dot, I believe, means it's in there, period. So you can see in each of the different types of fuels, the companies that put the different chemicals in the fuel and all of this sort of stuff. This was not easy to find. Biocide. Did you know that there are bugs growing in the gasoline? They have to kill that. Biobor, JF, Kathon, FP. Anyway, we won't get into all that. Story for another day. I have way too many tabs open now. Where are we? We are here. We are not there. We are here. No, we're not there. Holy crap. Too many tabs. So, this one. So, this is where the rubber meets the road. Who could geoengineer the whole planet in the split second and nobody ever know? The NATO Pipeline Committee. Who makes the oil and the jet fuel? The United States and Saudi Arabia and Brazil. Who just blocked the UN resolution to list who's all doing geoengineering research? Those three countries. Who could deploy it? NATO overnight. So I just came to this conclusion. NATO Pipeline Committee, AC 112, determines the standards of jet fuel and approves additives across 28 NATO member states. They have Working Group Number 1, AC 112 Working Group 1, Special Tasks, which take on special tasks as directed by the NPC. Special task for today. Geoengineer the whole goddamn planet. How can we do that? Well, let's add a lot of calcium to the jet fuel. How can we do that? Well, let's switch to JP8. That's a pretty good idea. Would that work? I don't know. You tell me. This is from my chemtrail page, and it's climateviewer.com/cirruscloudsmatter. And I will end with this. Let me go back over here. Where's the metals one? Are cirrus clouds filled with metals? What do we have here? Aluminum went from 21 2100 parts per billion to 9300 parts per billion when they switched to JP8. Calcium, another thing that David Keith talks about geoengineering, went from 5,000 parts per billion to 31,000 parts per billion. That's why the sky is so jacked up. Because from 1988 to 1996, all 28 NATO countries switched from gasoline to kerosene diesel fuel. From JP4 and JP5 to JP8. And that is some dirty fuel that loaded the sky with metals. And because they have things like the high thermal stability additive, HITS additive, it allows military planes to fly into the stratosphere. That's why you see white unmarked planes so high in the sky, higher than all of the commercial flights. Unmarked planes, they're not on flight tracker, and they're burning this type of shitty fuel that is loaded with metals. The military is and this is true of all military. The military is the worst polluters on the planet. They always have been. They probably always will be. Look up burn pits in Iraq and Afghanistan, and how many people got sick from that. Look up depleted uranium use in the Iraqi wars. Look up the burning oil fields. The list just goes on and on. But at the end of the day, right there is all you need to know. Titanium went from 35 parts per billion to 1,056. Sulfur, 450 to 1690. Strontium from 70 to 351. In almost every single case, it got worse. And you can see it with your own eyes. This is from a paper called Trace Element of Polycyclic Aromatic Hydrocarbon Analysis of Jet Engine Fuels, Jet A, JP5, and JP8. And this comes from dtic.mil. So, this is straight from the Space Weapons Warfare report. I didn't make this stuff up. I took the screenshot from here. And this is December 2000. The first time the word chemtrails was ever used on the internet was 1997. The first article ever written about chemtrails talked about JP8. So, is it accidental geoengineering? You be the judge. But, look right there. In my news ticker, Guardian, this just came out. Just released. Guardian article. U.S. Saudi Arabia blocking geoengineering resolution. It's everywhere right now. This is Monday, March 18th. And it's just rolling out everywhere. But, hey, they don't care. Geoengineering, they're going to make it a reality. The only thing that we can do as the little people we are is demand accountability and transparency. And that's why my proposal, the Environmental Modification Accountability Act, is so important. And unfortunately, it would involve the United Nations as well. Because I tend to agree with the ETC group. As shitty as the UN is, they're the only place that could literally regulate this on a worldwide scale. And at any moment, China could decide to geoengineer the planet. Russia could decide to geoengineer the planet. Holland, for F's sake, could decide to geoengineer the planet. David Keith, even in his own studies, showed that it could be done with as few as 14 planes. There are well over 150,000 flights a day. So right now, we got a serious problem. There are 10 technologies to control the weather. They are used every single day. Nobody knows, and they are definitely clearly towards geoengineering governance, David Keith's field experiments to prove that it's all safe and that we should be able to do it, and then finally spraying the whole effing globe with chemicals. I hope this video has been informative for you. I hope that you will study all the material that I provided. I hope that you will like and share this video. If you didn't catch it live, I'll do a video later about the two major papers that came from David Keith and company on global deployment of geoengineering, what it would cost, how they would do it. And yes, in one of his early papers, he literally said we could do it with as few as 14 planes. They even invented a plane called the SAIL, Stratospheric Aerosol Inflatable Lifter, to do it. So anyway, we won't get into that. It's a discussion for another day. But this is the plan. And right now, they're just moving up the ladder. And we got to put a stop to this at some point. We've got to get some accountability and transparency. And I hope that this has been helpful for all of you. So please like and subscribe, share this video. Leave me a comment if you didn't catch it live. And, keep me going. I appreciate everybody on patreon.com/ClimateViewer. You guys were able to help me fund the servers for all three of my websites for another year. I didn't have to do a donation drive for the first year ever because you guys already paid for it. And I greatly appreciate that. Or you can give a one-time donation with PayPal on PayPal or GoFundMe. I appreciate those as well. So this isn't about the money. This is about the truth and the facts and the serious nature of what we're facing right now. I don't want my children, I have a 2-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old daughter, to grow up in a world where a group of technocrats sitting in a room somewhere can decide what the global temperature is. I don't want a group of technocrats sitting in a room deciding who lives, who dies, who gets rain, who does not, who controls the weather, controls the world. And because geoengineering by default is intended to change climate over the long haul, it will change weather over the short haul. And the changes completely unknown, likely to be severe. So whenever people blame climate change, remember, they're the climate changers. If you don't know the history of weather modification, those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. Please go to weathermodificationhistory.com and learn the history. Read the articles that I've linked in this video. If you didn't understand everything, it's fine. Rewatch it. But we've got to get more people involved in this discussion. Not just NGOs who are, having a conversation far removed from us little people. Everybody should be in on this debate. Not just a bunch of freaking robots that are like, oh my God, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez cares so much. I mean, she's factually incorrect on everything, but she's morally superior and she's the boss. I'm here to fucking tell you, I'm the boss when it comes to this geoengineering topic. And I've done my homework. I've been at this for 10 years. And we are in a serious situation if we don't get ahead of this now. So I'm going to continue to pressing on this information as long as I can, till my dying breath, till it's either gone away permanently forevermore, and we start planting trees and living harmoniously with our environment, like my Native American ancestors did. I'm Apache Choctaw. We have got to live harmoniously with nature, and we can do that. And that should be a goal. Replanting trees should be a goal. Stopping the killing of old growth forests should be a goal. But it seems like their only goal is, let's chop down trees because it's getting in the way of 5G. We stopped the Dust Bowl by planting 220 million trees. Let's chop those down because we need more room for crops. And by the way, climate change sucks. You're the blame for it. And, since we're not going to stop using fossil fuel and we're not going to stop these ship tracks, we're certainly not going to stop the flying and the plane farts. Let's do geoengineering. That sucks. It's unacceptable. And I hope that you agree. And, the only person that can change it is you. So never doubt that a small group of dedicated individuals could change the world. In fact, it's the only thing that ever has. So I appreciate all the climate viewers watching this, who will watch this, and I really appreciate the people that go the extra mile and stick it out for the whole video. I know that an hour is a lot to take out of your day for anybody, but when we're talking about such a big issue, I've barely scratched the surface during this hour. So I look to be doing a radio show in the near future, hopefully on Red State Radio. I've been offered a position by Scott Adams. So luckily, that's an open standing order, and we'll be able to talk to this and bring it to a different audience, an audience that's not, in the echo chamber, who already know. I don't want to be preaching to the same choir. I want to be reaching new ears, and I think that's going to be a good way to do it. So I look forward to that. And I appreciate everybody who supported me over the last 10 years and who continue to do so. Guys, you have the information now. Knowing is half the battle, and with information comes power. And with power comes great responsibility. So even though geoengineering will kill people, violence is not the answer. The answer is to attack ideas, not people. God bless you.
Kids are impressionable. That's why here at this station, we watch the programs and commercials your child watches carefully. He may see bad guys, but not in the role of heroes. And he'll learn that crime doesn't pay. Because your child's welfare is our concern, too. That's part of our code.
Better than anything you can get without a prescription. Anything. It's the best.